Hello, I am that Rob Human, and this is part 8 of the Tabletop Playground development series. In this episode, we're going to dive into the multi-state object, which is a really fun and interesting object type. So we're going to load up our mod here, and I'm going to create a new object. And we're going to create a multi-state object, and I'm going to start with a kind of a pseudo card. And you'll see why in just a second, but I'm going to pick my Atlas card. This is the one that has the 4 slots, but only 2 are used. And we're going to hit OK here and create. And you might think, and you might be forgiven to think, that this is fairly identical to a card or a token right off the bat. And in some ways it kind of is, and in a lot of ways it's not. The way that the multi-state component works is similar to a card. It is a silhouette-based, an image-based, transparency-based model. So it's a generative model based on the transparency of a given object or these predetermined shapes. However, that's... or I should say, and further, those atlas... The atlas that constitutes the texture is indexed similarly to a card. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. These don't function as cards behaviorally, only in how some of the textures are kind of assigned and allocated. So, like, you can't pull a multi-state object into a hand, or it doesn't... you can't draw them or shuffle them or things like that. You can't stack them in a deck. But in the editor, the behaviors are fairly similar. So to that end, we'll dive in here, and I'm going to just blitz through a little bit of here and kind of get us to an initial state that makes a little bit more sense instead of this chaos that you see here. And I'll go over some of these settings here in a minute, but there you go. That's kind of more or less what I was expecting here. So as per usual, we have our typical global object settings for the template here. You'll see that primary color isn't used, and neither is roughness or metallicity. That's kind of an exception to that. Get your metadata and tags and so on. We're going to come back to the model here. It is available. We're going to get into that a little bit, so I'm just going to close that for now. But you have your lights and your stat points, and as is typical. Again, you also have your collisions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this is where the magic happens as far as a multi-state object. Now, as I mentioned, this uses an atlas system, so you've got, to pull up the actual atlas here. This is my atlas. It's got 4 slots. I'm currently only using 1, but it's got 2 images in it. So for this, what I can actually do is create another state, and this is what changes between, like, when you rotate through the state in the game. And I'll dive into that a little bit, but basically there is the current state, and you can swap it so you get the second state in-game and whatnot. And you'll notice that the back here is of the old index, and we'll get to that in a second. But where this is really useful as a mechanism is, suppose you have units or cards that upgrade or rank up throughout your game, throughout the gameplay loop. Multi-state objects are a perfect use case for that. Or another example here might actually be if you have a token that counts. Instead of having a separate token for 1, 2, 3, 4, and all your ordinal numbers or cardinal numbers, you can create an atlas for all the different numbers that you want, and have a multi-state object. So that way you can just be like, increment the state, and it'll go up to the next number. There's an argument to be made that might actually be better served in UI, in scripting, We'll get to that when we get into the scripting stuff later, but that is a use case that I have seen and, for lack of a better term, endorse. Not that I'm an authority on it, but, it's a good use case for that. My particular use case is what I already kind of mentioned, is units that rank up. So like if you have a rank 1 unit and you might have 5 ranks or 3 ranks for a unit, instead of having separate components for them, you might have one multi-state component with 3 states. In fact, when I get into this a little bit more, I'm actually going to create a unit that has exactly that, an upgrade system, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But before we do, much like the card system, there's the back and the front, so it's kind of the same kind of behavior. So you've got the back image type might be the same file, and you can pick the index. So I could use this third index here if I had the foresight to actually use that third index. You'll notice though that there is no hidden state, and that's because it's not a card. Cards, multi-state objects don't have a hidden state because they can't be put in your hand. That might change. I'm not sure how that's going to fly. I know that object holders, as distinct from card holders or kind of universal object holders, are planned by the developers. I'm not sure where that's going or where that is. I have no information about it. I hope it becomes a thing because I think that'd be really useful. So go upvote the development board, their Trello. You can vote for stuff that you want to see in the game. And I encourage you to do that. Anyways, so we can actually change this to be a separate file completely, so we can, just like we did with the cards, we can use the reverse side, and every state will share this back side, despite the state changing. Or you could use same as front, so it will change with the state. See how that works. Additionally, you can have a separate file indexed like front, so if you had, and I'll just pull my test grid here just to illustrate that. Again, this is that I don't have a picture of it handy. Yeah, this one, where you've got the 4 quadrants, right? So first one is red, second one is green, right? Red, green. So you can do that. 9 times out of 10, you probably want same as front, just because it basically becomes double-sided. You can, so there's that. You can also change the shape, so you can have the rounded corner version, and again, this is that wonky 512 by 512 texture version, so in my case, I use the image. You can also have sharp corners or round corners or hexagons, and just like cards and tokens, those work exactly the same. You can also set it up to be emissive, and you can't really see that in this iteration of that, but basically, again, it'll be unaffected by light, which is cool. Really handy for standees, which I'll get to in a second. And then you also have circular, which not necessarily the best name for it, because you might think it's the same as round. No, what circular does, it basically loops. So like in-game, if circular is unchecked, you can go down to state 1 or you can go up to state 2 in this case, and it will stop at that. Circular lets you loop through them, so like it'll wrap around. So I could, next state, if this is checked, next state will loop back to Ace of Diamonds. And then if you go previous state, it'll loop back to Ace of Clubs. So if that's the thing that you need, there you go. And then states and image is just like cards. What's the texture count in your atlas, width and height. In this case, it's 4x4, and so on. So I'm going to just save this as silly multistate, and I'll give you an example of how this behaves in-game. start up an empty table, as always, and pull this in, and yeah, here's my really tiny card, and then I can right-click on it, and it'll be switched to next state, and it'll switch to the ace of clubs. Again, you've got some properties as per usual. I don't think you can actually, yeah, you can't change anything of appearance for these, because that makes sense. And there's also an option to switch to a random state. I don't know if there's a way to disable that. That's probably not a thing. But, you know, you can always, you can also use the hotkey R and Control R by default. And you'll see that this is disabled because I turned the circular option off. So this is the maximum state, this is the minimum state, you can't go back. So that's the bare bones of multi-state object. However, I kind of glazed over a couple things, which I will now dive into. So I'm going to create another multi-state object, and this time I'm going to use a, you know, just for now, I'll use the same card grid. Cool. And in this, we're actually going to touch on two different things. One is utilizing a 3D model in conjunction with a multi-state object, which you can do, as well as having multiple multi-state objects. So you can actually have multiple, I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than multiple multi-state objects, which it doesn't really explain it. So the best way to do this is to show you. But in order to show you, I'm going to kind of develop a specific component that is for a board game that I play. If you haven't heard of it, it's called ISS Vanguard. It's a very good narrative board game, kind of Gloomhaven-ish with a sci-fi bent. It's almost like playing Mass Effect Andromeda, but board game. Roommates and I have been having a blast with it. But one of the components that they have in there is a crew card, a crew member. And the way that the crew member is represented is as a card, as well as a miniature on the board. Now, I could do, you know, the miniature and the cards separately, but the way that I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to kind of combine the card and the standee in the same component. And you'll see how I do that. But the important thing, and why it's relevant for a multi-state object, is, as I alluded to before, the crew components can rank up. So, you know, it starts off at rank 1 and can go up to rank 3. But it's also multi-dimensional in that not only because of a certain expansion of the game can you have rank 1, 2, and 3. Once you get to rank 2, you have an opportunity to veteranize the crew member, which is slightly distinct from ranking up. It kind of changes their innate ability that they have, their skill. So there's kind of, like I said, 2 dimensions to it. And so you have rank 1, and you can have rank 2 unveteraned, rank 2 veteraned, rank 3 unveteraned, and rank 3 veteraned. So multi-dimensional. So this is actually a perfect use case for multiple multi-state components. That was a heck of a download. So I'm gonna shut up for a minute here and give me a minute to cook, and I might verbalize while I'm talking, but I'm just gonna set this up and go forth. So I'm gonna pick this standee here, or not standee, multi-state, and the character here is Isabel, and I'm just gonna use sharp corners. Scale here is going to be 2.5. I'm going to turn off 2.5. Oh, wrong way. 2.5, 2.5. There we go. That's vaguely card-shaped. And I mentioned that this is going to be a standee, so I'm going to actually lift her up a little bit. So she's now vertical. You notice that she got slightly darker, and that's just because of how lighting works. This is where emissive comes in handy. You can turn on emissive and it'll be perfectly bright no matter the lighting conditions. That's where it really, really shines. Shines, get it? Anyways, so if I'm doing this as a standee, I need a base, right? Well, I can add a new model. And I've got this little stand base model here, and I'm going to add that. And now you'll notice that the primary color is available, which is cool. In ISS Vanguard, actually, now that I have this here, crew members can be assigned to different departments. So there's actually 4 departments because it's up to a 4-player game. And so the departments are represented by different colors. So in one game, Isabel might actually get drafted by the recon player, which is red. So I'm going to use the standee, the base color, as the player color for that. Or in another game, she might be in sciences, which is purple. So that, that might be a thing. So I'm going to lift this up a little bit. I'm going to bring her up to 2.25. That's better. Slightly floaty, but that's okay. That's a nice visual effect that I'm okay with. I'm actually going to duplicate this model here, and I'm going to scale it down to 0.875. Undo this. Actually, that can stay there. That's fine. Oh, too far. 0.125. That's good. And I'm going to turn off Use Object Defaults, and I'm going to set this to 3. So now we have this ring of color around a gray base. Perfect. That's what I was hoping for. So let's talk about the rankings. Well, first off, I'm going to change this to same as front so that we don't hit that issue. So the card itself, and I'm going to just show the atlas here. This atlas has 2 indexes. The one on the left is her unveteraned, and the text on the right is the veteran version. And this is what I mean about it changing the stats. So I'm going to just add another state here. And now you can see when I swap the states back and forth, it goes from veteran or unveteraned to veteran. Green, junior, I don't know. I don't want to call it green because that might be confused with the color. Unveteraned and veteran states. But that doesn't actually help us for the rank. The rank is in the meat space game is represented actually by a card sleeve. You slide their player card into a card sleeve, and I'm actually going to go around in corners because that looks nicer. The card sleeve has a little rank indicator on it. So to represent that in Tabletop Playground, I'm actually going to create another multi-state component, which is right here. And when I do this, it's going to look a little funky, but trust me. So I'm going to add another component, and you'll see that there's another state component. And it's kind of blacked out, but bear with me. So I'm going to choose the front image, and I've got this multi-state ranks. And to show what that looks like, I've got rank 1, 2, and 3. Don't mind this, don't worry, we'll get to that. So I've got an index, or an atlas that is 2 by 2. And we will change the shape to be an image. And I'm going to use the rank S, which is the shape. And that just conforms the image to that. In fact, I'll show you what that looks like. It's just a transparent flag, so it conforms to the shape of the image. It's fine. That's pretty much how that works. So I'm going to actually scale this down quite a bit, and I will scoot this up to like here, and -9. Oh, nope, we want 90, and maybe we want a little bit smaller here. I'm actually going to bump that up to 0.2. And I will slide that off to wrong axis. Slide that off to the side a little bit. Let's actually go for 0.625 instead of 0.75. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. I can go a little bit higher on that. Too high. Let's just do 4.1. There we go. So we got a little rank indicator there, right? So we've got the veterancy handled by the card, standee, multi-state object, and we've got the rank that'll be handled by the rank object up here. But we need to add the rest of the rank indicators, so we'll add that one. And you might notice that when I go to rank 2, the veterancy comes up. Well, the actual bit of a signal for this is if I go back to the, or let's say I add the third one, and I go back to the previous component, it says 3 states in total. Now the way that this works is you've got, if between the two multi-state components, it takes the kind of the maximum of each component as the number of states available. So there's 3 states here, even though the first component only handles 2 of them. In fact, if I come back to this third one, I think it'll just, like, yeah, it'll just wrap over. It'll kind of extend the first component such that, you know, 2 is used for the third state. Or the second state is used for the third state. And it's not actually what I want for this. What I want is my distinct overall 5 states. Again, that's rank 1 unveteraned, rank 2 unveteraned, rank 3 unveteraned, rank 2 veteraned, and rank 3 veteraned. So the way that I need to do this is I need to have a total of 5 states. But I can recycle the textures. I don't need to have different textures for each of those 5 states. So the way to do this is state 1 is good, right? We're good there. State 2, I want to do rank 2 unveteraned. So while I'm in my my crew member here, I'm going to change the index of that one to 1. I'm actually going to just duplicate it. So this handles rank 1, 2, and 3, all unveteraned. Cool. So I'm actually going to just create another one, and it actually incremented on its own, so this is the veteran state, and I'll just duplicate that one. So I've got 5 states. 1, 2, and 3 unveteraned, and then 4 should be rank 2 but veteran, and rank 3 veteran. Well, that's a little, it's not quite working right, so I need to come back to the next component. I basically just need to duplicate this one and this one. So I can do exactly that. So if I duplicate this, it'll actually be out of order, so I'm just going to tweak this manually. Rank 3 is here, and I can just add another one, so 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. Perfect. So I can swap through. The first one should be rank 1 unveteraned, rank 2 unveteraned, rank 3 unveteraned, rank 2 veteran, rank 3 veteran. And that is now working exactly as expected. So I can say this is Isabel Sandoval. Right? Cool. I'm actually going to change the color of the state, and we'll handle that in game. It'll be fine. I might actually turn that to emissive as well. So yeah, that's the thing. Now, if there were, like, how do I put this? If there were 6 states and like rank 1 veteran were a thing, what I could do is actually do like 1, 2, and 3 and turn on circular, and then over here I could have 6 states, you know, unveteran, 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 veteran, veteran, veteran. But the fact that you can't have a rank 1 veteran kind of throws that out the window. But you can get clever with the way that it loops with the circular option and different multi-state components. I trust your ability there. So I'm going to save that just to make sure I did. Yeah. And let's actually turn on straighten up on grab. Cool. Because I want to do that. I'm actually going to make this feel a little bit more... plastic is fine. What have you. Cool. Oh! Collisions. Collisions will respect the collider. Or the collider will respect the multi-state component. It'll have the, again, as is typical, a bounding box around it. So if I want the behavior where the standee isn't collidable, I can just add a custom collider that uses the stand base, and it'll just, that is the only collidable place. And again, I could, duplicate this and move this up to 0.125, which is the same here, and scale this to 0.875 so that I get a collider on both parts. Probably doesn't matter, but for the sake of consistency, sure, why not? So we'll head back, and I will preview, empty table, go to my favorite environment, because it has the prettiest reflections, and let's bring in Isabel. Now, if I were a little bit more careful, I would probably scale up all of these, because it's actually kind of small compared to, like, a proper card. But, like, that might not matter to you. Oh, that's something. We'll circle back to that in a second. The hover is a little wonky. We'll deal with that in a second. But essentially, now I can change the state of the character to be what I want. And that can be handled through scripting. I can also use my number keys. State 1 is the second state, so it's 0 indexed. But honestly, you could always have, like, custom actions here in the scripting to be like, make veteran or whatnot, and we can handle all that. In fact, I might actually go back to this as an example on how we do the scripting for that. That might be a good use case for that. And again, we can take the appearance and say player color, so now she's a member of the blue players squad, or she is the blue player crew member. So yeah, that's a thing. Go to this, and I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover as far as multi-state objects. It's a really powerful tool with fairly niche application, but like when you need it, it's really handy. It's surprisingly, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but like it's definitely underrated. It's really powerful in some really select circumstances, particularly if you can find a way to combine states in a way that makes sense for your use case, like I have here. I think the only other thing I'll mention here is, again, there's no masking, so you can't tint the multi-state objects at this point. I don't know if that's going to change. I think that's on their to-do list. I imagine that one of the things that they mentioned is that like roughness and metallicity and masking and tinting and all that are coming to cards, and I assume that multi-state components will also receive the benefit of that, but I'm not sure. I would check with plasticity and check out their Trello board and see if it's on the roadmap, and if it's not, put a request in for it. If that is a thing that you need. So yeah, there's multi-state components for you. As always, you can drop a comment if you're confused, or hit me up on the Discord, as is usual. And if anything's unclear, I will gladly make an addendum to this. And yeah, so Good luck.